100 million Deutschmarks, and it wasn't worth the paper it was printed on. Billionaires getting wiped out. That's an interesting financial collapse. Billionaires getting wiped out. All those wonderful people have been busting their ass for year after year after year after year and have saved up nice nest eggs and have nice big 401k plans that they plan on retiring on. You better cash that in and buy all the food and gold you can. Well, actually, I wouldn't recommend buying gold that much, but buy silver. You can at least trade silver, but food is more important, food and water. Being prepared. Being prepared for an economic collapse, because the chances are you are going to lose everything that you've worked so hard for to save up. If you had $100,000 saved up in the bank or $100 million saved up in the bank, and they're Federal Reserve notes, and the Federal Reserve note is worthless, then you own a million worthless Federal Reserve notes. Like I said, pile them up, put them in the loo. And that's what one of the realities that we're facing. But here's the other thing. On April 14th, or Nisan 14, Passover starts at sundown on the 14th of April, and it ends on sundown on the 15th of April, which interestingly enough, here in the United States, is the 15th of April is known as Tax Day. And at the 15th of April, that night is the first of 4 blood moons, 4 full lunar eclipses, which happen all on Hebrew holidays over the next 18 months. 2 on Passover, 2 on the Festival of Booths. There's a couple of other, Sukkot, I believe is the name of it, S-O-K-K-T-H-U-T-H. I'm not sure, I forget the name. But it's the ancient, or it's the biblical Festival of Booths. And this was a harvest festival. This was a time when they were out in the fields gathering the crops for the year. And so the moonlight that they would have depended on to help with those, those late harvest moons that, well, I don't know what you get down under, but we get usually in the beginning of October or the end of September. We get a huge, big harvest moon. It's like the moon seems twice as big as what it normally is, and it's really full and bright. Well, this year and next year, they are going to be eclipsed. Now, if you were a nation that ran on a lunar calendar and your highest holy holidays, which depended on the full moon, were being eclipsed, what would that tell you? But not only that, there are also 2 solar eclipses, both on the spring equinox, which is the first day of the Hebrew calendar, 2015, 2016. The last lunar eclipse happens September 28th, 2015. Interestingly enough, September 29th is the most accepted historical date for the birth of Christ. Everybody's saying, oh, what about December 25th? I thought that was his birthday. No, December 25th is the birth of the Sun, S-U-N, not S-O-N. It was transfigured by the Holy Roman Empire, which became the Holy Roman Catholic Church, as a celebration for the holiday of Saturnalia. It was tied into sun worship. Now, Saturn
allegedly, I'm sorry, I'm cutting you off. Finish your point. I'm sorry.
Okay. Saturn is also known as the star of the god Raphan, the star of the god Raphan. Now, there's a very interesting scripture in Acts. It's the most avoided scripture in the Bible, I think. But it's in Acts, the 7th chapter, the 42nd and the 43rd verse. I got a little homework for everybody to do here in a second. The disciple Stephen is standing before the Jewish high court. This is in the 1st century, after the death of Jesus. And this is the ruling class of Judea that Stephen was standing before. And he quotes the prophet Amos, and he says, and Amos is speaking in the first person of Yahweh, the God of Israel. And Yahweh says, was it to me to whom you worshipped those 40 years in the wilderness, O Israel? No, it was to the tent of Molech and to the star of the god Raphan to whom you made images and sacrificed to. And for that I will send you far beyond Babylon. Now, in around the year 600 BC, the Babylonians came and destroyed Solomon's temple and hauled the survivors off to Babylon. In 70, the Roman governor, or the Roman general, soon to become emperor, Titus, came in and wiped out Jerusalem and killed about 2 million Jews and took about 97,000 captive back to Rome. Now, look up the star of Molech or the star of the god Raphan. Molech is actually, the first Molech was the Egyptian god Set, S-E-T, who was a bisexual or homosexual god who required live child sacrifice.
And incidentally, they started up the search for extraterrestrial intelligence called Set-E.
How about that?
Yeah, I love that. And I heard I heard a while ago that they did a star chart analysis or something like that. You know, there's references in the Bible or something about the position of the stars the night Jesus was born, and a couple of scientists, astrologers or something, were like, "Well, that sounds really interesting. Let's have a look at our current star system and how everything's currently positioned now, and then let's roll the clock back until it hits the exact same position when Jesus was born." And it turned out it was like on September 11th or something.
Yeah, and there's also an interesting thing about, just a side note here, the Great Pyramid of Giza. We talked about the Sphinx not being Egyptian. I doubt that the Great Pyramid of Giza is Egyptian. And if anybody does research on what has been found out about the Great Pyramid of Giza, you don't find an Egyptian story. You find a Judeo-Christian story.
Mm.
And
well, apparently Christianity is the oldest religion on earth.
Well, I wouldn't exactly say that, but well, you see, all religion gets tracked back to the Anunnaki in Samaria. Before that, humans were children of God. We were children of Yahweh. You go back and you look at the first account. And we're going to talk about this in a minute because it has to do with our future, has a lot to do with our future. Let's stay a little bit more on subject here, where here we are dealing with these issues where we have, I mentioned the Star of Molech. Go to Google Images and search Star of Molech, and then think where you have seen a six-sided star with 6 points and 6 pyramids on it. Oh, did I just say 666? Yeah, I did. Think about that. The mark of the beast. And what was the image of Moloch? It was known better by the Canaanites as a Canaanite god, the Canaanite god Baal. And the image for Baal is a bull's head with a man's body sitting on a throne. And what they would do is the throne was actually a giant furnace, and they would build a fire in there, and they would throw live babies into the burning furnace. And that was Molech worship.
Sounds tasty. And incidentally, what do they do when they get all the wealthy and powerful and politically well-connected people in the world every single year at Bohemian Grove? Well, they burn a baby in effigy under a giant stone owl called Moloch.
Yeah.
I don't think the religion's changed that much in a couple of thousand years, do you?
Not at all. Not at all. But you see, when you go back and
may I interject, though? Because despite the fact that they're currently, even openly, kind of doing it, burning the bodies in effigy, of course we would never known about that if somebody hadn't infiltrated and shot the footage and what have you. But I can guarantee, or at least I'm highly suspicious, that they do real sacrifices as well, outside of everybody's view.
Anything goes at Bohemian Grove. And what happens at Bohemian Grove stays at Bohemian Grove. And here you have the world's most powerful, maniacal rulers all coming together to party. It's interesting. I just want to make a reference real quick to Prince William. When he was touring after his marriage, when him and Kate went on tour of the world to look at their future subjects, he was last seen just before the party at Bohemian Grove started. And he was supposed to be going back to London. But nobody ever saw him come back to London. You would think that there'd be fanfare and all sorts of pictures of the prince coming back to London with his new bride. Not a photograph. Makes you wonder where they went. But Bohemian Grove is starting and they were going back to London. That's the official word. And their press secretary said that they wanted to be alone in their private estate, away from the media.
Oh, yeah. That makes a whole lot of sense. Hey, and also, I think back in, what was it? Might have been 2010, I think. The Prime Minister, John Key of New Zealand, he was called to the States. They were having some big problem with their quantitative easing or something like that. And who can help you with a hell of a lot of big problems with quantitative easing? Oh, that's right, the guy who invents derivatives trading, of course. And so he visits the United States at the exact same time when Bohemian Grove is going on, and even mainstream media reported that he's going to Northern California, just north of San Francisco. Where's Bohemian Grove located?
Yeah, it's about the right location.
Uh-huh.
Hey, have fun. Just don't ruin my life.
See, that's the thing. I do actually want to ambush the Prime Minister and ask him, and he won't admit it, probably not, but I'll watch his frickin' eyes. When those eyes start darting all over the place like a captured animal, gotcha, frickin' scumbag. You were there. You were killing babies, weren't you?
Let me ask you, Prime Minister, did you find it difficult to sit down during your stay at Bohemian Grove?
He's like, no. It was actually quite easy because I had small boys to sit on my lap.
Oh, my goodness.
Did I just say that on the radio? Actually, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, allegedly, okay? Let me preface and surmise everything that I just said with the word allegedly.
Hypothetically.
Yeah. Even better.
Hypothetically.
Because I think they're somewhat hypo, because I think these old guys who go out there with the young boys and the porn stars and all of that kind of stuff, they are a bit hypo and somewhat pathetic, hence hypothetically.
There you go. The truth reveals itself once again. And truer words are always said in jest, and we seem to be having a good time laughing about this. So take it from where it comes. But I
think you really do have to actually have a strong constitution to be able to think about child murder and rape and sacrifice and be able to laugh about it without it destroying your freaking soul. All right?
Especially if you have children.
Yeah, exactly. But what choice do we have, ladies and gentlemen? It's going on, isn't it? It's going on. Are we gonna save all of these kids? No, we're freaking not, are we? They're dying right now. Thousands of them. At this very moment are probably being tortured and raped by the elite, and there's nothing we can do about it.
Because they vanish. They disappear. We just had a little girl killed in the United States here yesterday. They saw the person who... Now, this wasn't done by an elite. This was just done by some maniacal maniac who liked to murder little girls.
Well, that's probably why you heard about it.
Yeah.
In fact...
You don't hear about that. You don't hear about things at the top level.
Yeah.
Not unless somebody at the top level is spilling the beans.
Yeah.
Decides to say, okay, I had enough of this nonsense, like George Green.
Yeah.
If you go look for a video about George Green, he'll tell you that he was sitting in Aspen, Colorado. I believe it was the Prime Minister of France and Teddy Kennedy, and there was a lot of cocaine there. And when George's 14-year-old daughter walked in the room, George said that Teddy Kennedy said, "I'd like to do that." And George looked at him and said, "No, you wouldn't." And Kennedy said, "Why not?" He said, "Because that's my daughter." Kennedy said, "So?" I would have punched Kennedy right in the mouth and then kicked his ass across the room, out the door, down the hallway, down the stairs, and out into the street. And then said, "That's for Chappaqua." Oh, Chappaquiddick, sorry. That's for Chappaquiddick. Now, you want to talk about my daughter?
Sorry. What's Chappaquiddick? Is it like a relative to the Chupacabra?
No, Chappaquiddick, years ago, in the 60s, Senator Ted Kennedy drove off of a bridge and into the Chappaquiddick River where his secretary drowned to death. It's believed that she may have been pregnant.
I got you.
Mary Jo, I believe, was her name. Mary, I can't remember her last name. Starts with, it's got a hard-sounding C name, if I recall correctly, but it's been a long time since I brought up Chappaquiddick. But I mean, here's a man that's one of the most respected politicians and somebody who he respects enough to keep leisure company with, someone that I would think would be a friend. He wants to have sex with his underage 14-year-old daughter. What are you, nuts? Yeah, those are the people that are ruling this system.
Oh, yeah.
So, where does that leave us? Where does that leave us? We brought up so many issues that we're facing, everything from alien invasion to child sacrifice. Where does that leave us? We've got Fukushima exterminating the planet and the 45 agenda, the 2045 initiative to make sure that all biological humans are dead. Where does that leave us? Where did the technology come from? Why is this the most critical time in history? You see, all of these letters to Earth. I never intended to write a book. Never intended to write a book. I needed to know the scientific answers for myself. And I came across what started this all as I read Job, the 38th chapter, and I get down to the part where Yahweh is talking to Job, and he says, "Have you seen my storehouses of snow, which I have saved for the day of distress and war?" And I'm thinking, storehouses of snow? Job? Middle East? What would Job know of snow? Now, I had learned to meditate, and so I started meditating. I went to a meditative level, and I put myself, I went into deep meditation. I actually went into the theta level of the mind where your brain slows down nice and slow, and you can do remote viewing. And so I went back and I looked through the eyes of Job, and what I saw were the mountaintops around where I lived and how they were covered in snow. And I said, that's no storehouse of snow. And so I started kind of like what I would call playing Google Earth, where you start, coming away from looking at your feet to now looking at the planet from space. And I realized that the storehouses are at the poles. Oh, how stupid. That's how obvious. Hidden in plain sight, the storehouses are at the poles. How do you use snow? What are the properties? Well, you can either melt it or you can make more of it. I thought, well, if you made more of it, might cause another ice age. But if you melted it, that would really impact the world a lot, because 80% of the population of the planet lives within 90 miles of the coast. That's why they came out with SALT II treaties to keep short-range nuclear missiles, because they can pull a submarine up to somebody's coast and they can kill 80% of the population of that country because they live within 90 miles of the coast. They don't need long-range ballistic missiles. Got stealth submarines, pull up, wipe you out. So,
New Zealand also holds a very strategically significant position in the South Pacific, because there's what's called Submarine Alley. There's this giant trench that runs from I think the California coastline all the way down to New Zealand. And apparently, when stealth subs launch their missiles, they then jump down into that trench so they can't be detected or have retaliation against them, and then they hightail it back to New Zealand. So there you go. And I think New Zealand's going to be a US military base before long. Mark my words.
World power military base. Remember who the US is still controlled by. Hello, Queen.
Thank you.
And the Queen is a dame of the Knights of Malta and answers to the Pope. There you go.
Didn't the Pope excommunicate the royals back in the day, for making up the King James Bible and stuff? Or was it, what's his name? No, King Henry VIII. Yeah. He was like, you know what? I'm going to create my own English church. But why is that? Because I got syphilis and my wife won't sleep with me and I can't get divorced for her because of the Catholic Church. So you're just going to make up a new religion because you can't get laid? Yes. All right, well, you're the king.
Pretty much. I mean, that's what the man who was credited.
Just think about that. It's like the ultimate papal cockblock.
Well, the man who is credited with starting Christianity, with starting the Catholic Church, the Holy Roman Catholic Church, is Emperor Constantine, the man who commissioned the writing of the Bible. Did Constantine...